From the beginning of the interview done by British journalist Caelan Robertson with Phidias, who is a former YouTuber and a member of European Parliament since 2024, Caelan accused Phidias of being a Russian asset. And if you, like me, wanted to hear the definition of a Russian asset, you would get something like this.
If you put out disinformation and pro-Kremlin lines on a daily basis, especially from here, that makes you a Russian asset whether you're paid or not.
Of course, he did not provide any examples of the mentioned disinformation, which would be helpful when making such claims in public. And if you, like me, wanted to hear why the person is a Russian asset, see some evidence or hear some evidence or arguments that support the claim, you would get something like this.
The evidence is what you post on your feed that gets millions of views and shared by pro-Kremlin accounts. That makes you an asset to Russia.
Here's the logical question. If a person shares common sense, posts something that completely makes sense, and then gets shared by Kremlin accounts, does it automatically make him a pro-Russian? If a person shares that 2 + 2 = 4 and then Kremlin reposts it, does it mean that the person who posted the initial thought is pro-Russian? There's a person in the comments who asked, if you make a post and the Vatican shares it, does it make it holy? Which makes total sense in this way of thinking. Robertson tries again to define what a Russian asset is and says that it is something who puts out Kremlin propaganda.
Explain me, please.
It is an asset to Russia. An asset because you're someone putting out their propaganda, one-sided propaganda. That makes you an asset to Russia. Why are you doing that?
Of course, he doesn't give examples, though. People need to check it for themselves. After 10 minutes of defining the Russian asset, Robertson says that Phidias is a Russian asset and it's not opinion, it's a fact.
And you propagate Kremlin lines from that room, a seat in democracy in Europe, against a country, for a country, invading the largest democratic country in Europe. You are doing that every single day. This isn't my opinion, and it's not the opinion of the people that I've spoken to. This is a fact based on what you've posted on your own feed. Anyone can check this out. Why are you putting out Kremlin lies?
But here, I think it is more like opinion, because you don't hear any supporting evidence. You don't see the arguments or any claims that support the initial take. Robertson says that you post Kremlin lies, and it would have been nice to see what exact lies does Phidias share. If not in the interview itself, but maybe on the post-production, just add a few seconds of evidence that support your accusations and claims. Otherwise, what? People should have believed you, just what you say? If you don't support your claim with the facts, it's just opinions. It's not facts, as you say. Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to support the pro-Kremlin guy. He's also lying at some points. He said something like he represents the Cypriots and that 70% of them actually elected him, which is a lie.
70% of the people of my country, Cyprus, elected me. I'm from Cyprus. They elected me. They voted for me. I was the most voted person in Cyprus, and they elected me.
He got around 19.4 votes in 2024 European elections, which is not even close to national mandate. He also made a claim that most Cypriots and Greeks want to normalize relationship with Russia, and he said that there are some kind of polls that support his claim.
And they want to normalize relationship with Russia. See the polls of what the public opinion, not only Cyprus, but also Greece, that I speak Greek, the 65 to 70% they want to normalize relationship.
I'm not talking about Turkey or Cyprus right
with Russia.
But I've never actually found any results of those polls. Maybe I've missed something, but I have not seen any evidence for that as well. Anyway, here's the funny part of the interview. Phidias' idea is that they need to try to achieve peace through diplomacy. And as an example, he gives Turkey and Cyprus conflict. So 50 years ago, Turkey invaded Cyprus and took its land, about 40% of the land from Cyprus, and still they have negotiations, they have talks and diplomacy to actually solve the conflict.
We as Europeans speak with Turkey.
And he uses that example to say that maybe this time this might work as well. To what Robertson answers something really ridiculous.
To solve the problem.
50 years later.
Is something changed? They are not the aggressor 50
Russia
years later.
Actively...
Are you saying that after 50 years of invasion, it's okay to have diplomacy and peace talks and otherwise it's not? So people have to wait 50 years, people have to fight 50 years and live under missiles to not have talks? Is this your claim? And when Phidias started asking if having peace talks and diplomacy with Turkey is actually wrong by the same logic, Robertson started avoiding the question.
Turkey is the aggressor, but we still talk as Europeans.
I'm not talking about Turkey. I'm talking about Russia.
But I'm talking about Turkey because
you can talk about whatever you want. But right now, I'm asking you about Russia. I'm not talking about Turkey. I'm not talking about Cyprus. You went to Russia recently.
So you disagree that everyone here in the parliament wants to have diplomacy with Turkey.
I'm not
And-
talking about
but
Turkey.
not
You're trying
diplomacy-
to derail this interview talking about Turkey.
No, but
I'm not
that's-
interested in
that-
Turkey right now. Turkey could be another conversation.
But,
Today I'm
Turkey
talking about
invaded my
Russia
country,
because
Cyprus.
you're putting out Russian propaganda now, today. Why are you doing it? And you're avoiding my questions. You keep talking about Turkey. Turkey is irrelevant in this situation.
And I think he avoided the topic because he knew that if you go deep enough, you would come to the same conclusion that diplomacy might be the way, just like with Turkey and Cyprus. Or he could maintain his double standards and say that it's okay to solve the conflict with diplomacy and peace talks with one country in one situation, but not with the other country. Then Phidias explained that he is glad they're having this kind of discussion because this is diplomacy and people have different opinions and they can discuss this. This is what really freedom is. And then Robertson makes another statement. He says that Phidias is actually not interested in democracy because he shields for Russia, which have phony elections.
What
stands
is
for?
democracy? Define democracy.
The opposite of Russia. Elections.
What about the elections in 2024 in Romania that were cancelled? One more interesting thing. So the interview that is posted on Robertson account on YouTube got a huge support. People actually support Robertson and his points, and one dude even wrote that this is journalism right there. Dude, that's not real journalism. The guy just make accusations from the very beginning of the interview and that's it. He's like, you're pro-Kremlin and that's it. And what is interesting, Phidias' audience supports, obviously, Phidias. So people are still left in their bubbles. One support one guy, another support another guy, and you can clearly see that the interviews that are held like that are meaningless. People don't have discussions, people don't discuss ideas or thoughts. One guy just accuses another and another guy sometimes lies. That's all that's going on. People won't change their opinions and thoughts based on the interview because it basically works on emotions. So let me know what you think and subscribe to the channel.